Hello, Calaveras County. I'm Mike Taylor, and you just saw it. The doctor is in, Dr. Randy Smart. Dr. Smart, how are you?
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me today.
You bet. Now, comedians have joked about it. The commercial went viral before going viral was popular. I've fallen and I can't get up. Falling. That's a dangerous thing for all ages, but especially for the Calaveras County population, which happens to be a little on the older side.
A little bit older, right? Mike, This is the issue of falling and becoming injured is a new epidemic in healthcare. And to take you back a little bit, in the 1960s, what people would die from is strokes and infections, and we kind of conquered that. And in the 1970s and 80s, they were dying from heart attacks, and we kind of conquered that. And then we kind of conquered a lot of cancer, not all of cancer, and we thought the next epidemic would be dementia, brain failure and dementia. And that's what we've all been preparing for, and we got it wrong. It's not brain failure, it's the fact that so many of our older citizens are falling and getting injured. And to give you an idea of the extent of the epidemic, something on the order of 300,000 Americans fall and break a hip every year.
Goodness.
Every year.
Wow.
And when you fall and break a hip, your mortality and morbidity and mortality or death rate is really higher than if you'd have had a heart attack instead.
Really?
Absolutely.
Goodness.
Right. 800,000 Americans are seen in the emergency room and hospitalized every year, both for hip, head trauma. So this has become a huge epidemic, and it's one the healthcare industry is only starting to recognize. I mean, we kind of got caught off guard, and we really weren't prepared. I mean, patients would come in and they say, I fell, and we'd make sure nothing was broken, and we'd send them back out, and nobody said, wait a minute, that's a problem. But it is. It's an epidemic, and it's a problem, and it's one Calaveras faces.
And when you say, wait a minute, that's a problem, you mean the problem is the person fell, right? Not that they ended up in the emergency room because of that fall, it's that they fell to begin with.
Well,
right?
there's three problems. One is that they fell. You're exactly right. Two is that they broke a bone, and you shouldn't fall from that height and break a bone, so something's wrong with your bones. And three, we may have fixed your hip, but we didn't do anything about the falling or the weak bones. You know, and there's a number of steps involved that we just haven't been prepared for, but we need to be prepared for now.
And so is the trick preventing falling in the first place?
Yes, I would say the trick is trying to identify those that are at the highest risk for falling.
Okay.
And so kind of capturing those that are at high risk. And an example of that would be like some of the patients I saw today, in fact, only an hour ago, and those are patients that have already fallen. So if somebody falls, whether it's at home, whether it's on the job, whatever, that becomes a pivotal event that we need to recognize and say this is a potentially high-risk patient, particularly if they're over 65 years old. And so we need to intervene. We need to, I mean, you might take x-rays and you might, put on Band-Aids or whatever, depending on the injury. But that's not really what you need to do. You really need to intervene because the chances of them falling a second time are almost double.
Oh, because they're a little bit weakened and...
Well, no, if you fell once and you don't fix it...
You're going to fall again.
You're going to fall again, right.
Now, I don't want to derail all this, but is this where that question, do you feel safe in your home, kind of grew out of? Because that's one of the questions now that you're asked when you're assessed at the emergency room or visiting the doctor, and I just wondered kind of where that one came from.
Yeah, I'm not sure, maybe.
Okay.
That is a pretty broad question. I mean, that enters into domestic violence and a number of other things. But clearly, if we're doing our job right, the home should be assessed. And there's lots of things. Does it have enough lighting? Does it have any obstacles? Does it have stairs? And it should be assessed. We don't do that. I mean, we really don't do it. I'm embarrassed to say it. We don't do it. And then there should be corrections within the home.
And these falls that we're talking about aren't just what we would expect, falling down the stairs. These are the stumble over the little metal ridge between the carpet and the linoleum going into the kitchen.
Exactly. It's as simple as saying, I just need to go out and get the newspaper. It's on the step. Well, the cat runs by, or there's a little bit of a ridge, and maybe your vision isn't quite as good because maybe you have cataracts and maybe you're 65. And maybe your depth perception isn't quite as good, and so you don't realize there's a ridge, you hit it. That's the first problem. Then, if you start to go, you have to have the reflexes to catch yourself.
To stop yourself.
Now, if I pushed you right now, you'd catch yourself and you wouldn't fall. But if you were 75 years old, you could be like a tree. You could just go
just
boom,
topple right over.
Right, topple right over and break something. So it's a multitude of things. It's a visual issue, it's a strength issue, and it is the inability to react quickly and have reflexes. So it's kind of a multitude of things.
So it's kind of a combination of the curses of aging, is what it kind of sounds like to me.
It really is, Mike.
The kind of the confluence of them all.
And one of the that's a great. I'm going to have to use that phrase in my practice. The curses of aging. I really like that. But one of the curses of aging is balance. And so for your balance to work right, there are like 5 things that really have to work well. Part of it is your brain. Part of it is your middle ears. Part of it is your vision. Part of it is certain nerves that go to certain joints. Part of it is your feet. And your feet have to be able to touch the ground and have feeling in them. And a lot of people don't have feeling in their feet for a variety of reasons. So as we age, those things just don't work as well. And it only takes one of those really to start the problem. And if you have 2 or 3, you're at risk.
You're at risk for falling.
So balance is a big deal. Big deal.
Is there anything we can do to kind of check how our balance is doing as we're aging?
Well, I do it in my office all the time. People don't actually understand why we're sitting in the room staring at them, but we're actually assessing them. And so all afternoon, I've said, look, why don't you get up on the table? Mrs. Smith, why don't you get up on the table? Or Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones, why don't you get up on the table? And I watch how they get up on the table.
How they get up, okay.
And if they're kind of teetering a little bit and tippy-toeing, I immediately know they're a fall risk.
Okay.
So I guess where I'm going with that is when you go to your appointments, we're actually doing more than you think we're doing. We're not just writing prescriptions, which we should talk about. We're not just writing prescriptions or playing with computers. We're watching you move around, and in many cases, we're concerned and saying, she's got a problem or he's got a problem. So getting your doctor if you're over 65, there's a couple things you should do. You should go to your doctor and say, look, am I at risk for falling? What do you think? It's a relatively easy question to answer. But here's what's really important, is we never ask patients if they have fallen. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that. And I regard my practice as a good practice, and I think the quality of care is really good. But honestly, we don't ask the question, and so the patient doesn't come in and say, by the way, 2 months ago I fell. They don't tell you that. But I think they're a little bit self-conscious about it, but it's just not part of the normal dialogue. And we as providers don't say, look, have you fallen? And in some senses, it really almost should be another vital sign. You want to get blood pressure, pulse, oxygen, weight, and you want to know, did you fall? Because if you fell, red flags go up, and we should start saying, okay, are they at risk, and what can we do about it?
Yeah. Well, when we're little, we're not falling as far. One, that's beside the point, but where I was going is we fall, we skin our knee, we put a Band-Aid on, and we're good to go.
Right. We're up and at 'em, moving. Right.
But when you're 65, you fall, and even if you do get your hands up to brace yourself on the way down, you're probably going to jar something enough that it could be damaging. So,
well, you know, that's true, Mike. But what's really interesting to me is, I think you said, you know, I fell and I can't get back up.
mm-hmm.
Something like 30% of those over 70, when they fall, cannot get back up.
Cannot get up again.
Big number.
That's a huge number.
If you get up into the high 80s, like 85, 88 years old, the number goes up to 80%.
Oh, goodness.
If you're in your high 80s and you fall at home, fall in the kitchen, fall in the bathroom, wherever you fall, 80% cannot get back up.
Wow.
They can't get back up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really kind of behind the curve. I mean, we really need to do more with this. And so we're starting in the community to have discussions about this among the docs and among the healthcare agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Nationally, they're starting to have discussions about this. People are kind of alarmed. In fact, I brought a graph with me. You may want to show the audience.
Mm-hmm.
But what this graph shows is the number of unintentional falls that cause death. And this is going from 2005 all the way up to 2015. And it's anybody looking at this can realize there's a big problem. More and more people are falling and dying.
That is something.
Absolutely.
It really is. Now, you mentioned kind of doctors and the medical community getting involved. In what ways are you looking at kind of stepping in?
Well, right, exactly. So if we have patients that go to the emergency room for falls, we need to jump on that. Maybe they didn't break their hip or break their wrist, but we need to intervene. So we want that emergency room to call us and say, you know, Mr. Jones fell. Can you guys see him? We need to do an assessment, and in that assessment, we want to know, is it a medication issue?
Oh,
you know,
okay.
there are sedatives and medicines that make your balance not as... So we want to look at your medicines very carefully and say, should we stop some of these or change some of these? Mm-hmm. If it's a diabetic or a high blood pressure or a heart failure patient, some of their medications can cause low blood sugar or low blood pressure, and that can create a falling kind of... So we can do that kind of intervention. But what we can really do, and what I'm really excited about, is we can train those high-risk patients to have better balance.
Really?
And to have better strength. Absolutely. And that's really what I believe is the core of trying to prevent falls. And there's very good data to support this. Is if you take somebody who has fallen once, we know their rate now is double, and let's say they fell twice because, for whatever reason, you can put them in a balance training class or a Tai Chi. You've heard of Tai Chi?
Oh, yeah, I've done Tai Chi.
Tai Chi, right.
Let me tell you, folks, there's no better workout without having to jump and bounce around. It is an incredible workout for the mind and the body.
That's great. So there is very good data. There are very good data that if you take this high-risk population and you put them into a Tai Chi program, you can really make a difference in terms of balance, falling, and you can take it a step further. You can teach them how to fall. So there is a way to fall. You know, I don't know if you ever took judo or karate, but there's a way to fall and not get hurt, and we can teach some of our senior citizens how to fall.
Okay.
So there's a lot we can do, and we should be doing it. I mean, our senior citizens are really some of our highest value part of society.
That's kind of where the knowledge is still hanging out.
I mean, they put in their time, they've done so much, and I really believe we should do a better job of helping them and taking care of them. And when you see these numbers and you see the fall risks, I am very energized about, in my practice and in the healthcare community in general, of getting these folks recognized, getting them into treatment, and making a difference.
You know, it also sounds like some of this, Dr. Smart, falls on those that visit these folks in their homes. And, and I'm going to go back to my folks and my father in particular, because he died after my mother did, and I'm not speaking ill of the dead, but my dad's house got a little cluttered after Mom passed. And it's the kind of clutter that, when the son or the daughter or, family members show up they spruce up and clean up and tidy up and get rid of, the newspapers on the floor because he's done reading it and has just kind of set it there and he'll pick it up later. Well, that's right. Either he won't or he gets up to go somewhere and then slips on it, and there you have a fall right there in the living room.
Right.
So does some of this fall on folks that visit our elder citizens in their homes?
I have to tell you, Mike, at least in my practice, I am really impressed with how many of our older patients really get good family support. The families in this county really care about their parents, and they really do a good job. They're there for them. They bring them into appointments. They drive them around. And so that's a perfect opportunity to talk to the family about exactly what you're talking about. To say, look, you're doing a great job. You're doing great with nutrition. You're doing great with sleep. Doctor's appointments, et cetera. But let's talk about the fall risk in the house. Tell me what is in the house and what it looks like. But what would be even more perfect, and I like perfect, would be to get an occupational therapist to do a home visit. So this is what occupational therapists do. And they can go to your home, they can look around and say, that's a problem, that's okay, that we can fix, this we need to fix today. And I don't know exactly how that's funded. There are scenarios where it's funded, like in a stroke scenario, but that's not a fall scenario. So I'm not sure exactly how that's funded. But in a perfect world, we would have the patient maybe in the ER would call me, and I would say, okay, I'm going to bring them in, I'm going to look at their medication list, I'm going to talk to them about strength training, I'm going to refer them to an exercise class, and I'm going to enlist the occupational therapist to go to their home, talk to their family, and get all the obstacles out of there. That would be a perfect world. Yeah. And we can come close to that, I think. I think we can. Yeah. But we don't do it now. If that is 100% of the solution, right now we probably do less than 10%.
I was going to say we're not doing
it's not
very
so good.
Well.
And it's not so good in Calaveras. It's not. But this is across the country and across the state. We're not doing good as a culture.
You mentioned Tai Chi, and I just am curious, is this an exploding, I'll call it phenomenon, condition, problem, in just the U.S., or is it kind of worldwide too? Because where I'm going with this is thinking of the Far East, where they start their day with usually a form of exercise and or Tai Chi, even as a part of their job. And so their bodies are doing this more often than I think most of us Americans are.
I don't really know what the worldwide data are. I know it's a phenomenon. The falling and breaking bones is a phenomenon related to aging, and I know for sure other cultures do have the same problem. Yeah. But whether it's the same magnitude or not, I'm really not sure. I really don't know. But you're right. If an Asian or a Middle Eastern culture is doing Tai Chi and doing body strength, I would expect them to have lower fall rates and lower fracture rates.
I would think so, and I'm going to stick on the entire episode being about Tai Chi, but what surprised me about it is you don't have to be a physically fit, workout kind of person who's going to go out and do judo.
No,
that's
you don't.
not what it is. Tai Chi is all about smooth movements. It's all about low impact movements and shifting your body weight and learning how to center it on the planet. So I found it fascinating. And like I said, it's a workout that really surprises you because you think you're moving so slowly and you're not really doing much. And then you get done and you realize you broke a sweat and you're breathing a little heavier because of the work you were doing.
Absolutely. If you want to intimidate an older person, tell them they need to go exercise. And they sit there and go, You don't get it. It's just not happening. But if you take them into a program like Tai Chi, where it is slow movements, it is perfectly designed for that population. And it develops core strength, it develops balance. And I happen to know there's a good Tai Chi program in Murphy's, at the Murphy Senior Center. My practice is in Murphy's. And so the Murphy Senior Center has a Tai Chi program. They also have a balance program. And their Tai Chi program, I think, is 3 days a week, every week.
Wow, that's a great workout regimen for someone in their 60s
pretty accessible.
and 70s.
It's done by certified instructors. And so it's kind of the ideal intervention for this population. And you could even sit in a chair and start Tai Chi. I mean, you could sit in this chair right now and start doing some upper body Tai Chi.
You bet.
And start doing some flowing movements, start doing some turning movements, and ultimately get to the point where maybe you do it with a walker.
I was going to say.
And maybe start using your legs.
Work your way to standing up and doing it and getting the complete benefit.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
What do you think is the next step in Calaveras County? How can the medical community kind of begin intervening better? And what can those of us who haven't fallen yet kind of do around our homes? Is there things we should be doing? That's kind of loading a lot of questions in there, but...
No, it's a good question, Mike, is how can we as a community start this process? And it takes a little bit of leadership, but physicians have leadership skills, and so you start by talking to the medical staff at Mark Twain Hospital, and they meet every quarter, and you can say, look, let's talk about falling and fall prevention. Let's get the emergency room engaged. Let's get the orthopedic surgeons engaged.
Oh, sure.
And then you take a step out to some of the nonprofits in Calaveras, and you take a step further out to some of the community centers, and you can. It's within reach. I mean, with a little bit of leadership, pardon me, and probably not a lot of funding. And an awareness kind of concept. I think you could really make a difference in the county, and I think you could measure it. I mean, you could start measuring the number of times people have repetitive falls, repetitive injuries. You could measure the difference between those that are in training, those that are not, that how many times they're in our emergency room. You could measure this.
I was going to say, I would imagine that unfortunately you end up with kind of the frequent fallers. I was going to say frequent flyers, and frequent fallers came out of my mouth instead. But
they are.
And sadly, as you just said, you fall once and your likelihood of falling again just goes right through the roof in no time.
And we don't do anything about that. That's where I feel bad.
Yeah.
We need to change that. I'll tell you, one of the toughest kinds of appointments is you'll see somebody who's rickety and they're having trouble getting up on the exam table, and you're kind of worried, and you talk to everybody, and the next day the phone rings and they come in and they've got a black eye, and their skin is torn on their arm, and you just go, man,
You knew it was going to happen.
You knew it was going to happen, and whatever you did didn't work. I mean, those are really hard.
We're down to about our last 3 or 4 minutes. What should everyone be doing? I mean, do you do kind of a fall assessment through your home and just kind of look at places where you might trip? Or do you do this at Grandma and Grandpa's or Mom and Dad's house?
Yeah, so if you're under 65... Not everybody. If you're under 65 and healthy, let's put it that way, you probably just need to maintain a healthy, normal lifestyle.
Start doing Tai Chi.
and maybe slow down a little bit, right? We get going too fast. But probably the most important thing is to find either our family, parents, grandparents, friends, aunts and uncles, and say, look, I know about this falling thing. Let's look at the house. Let's look at you. And as a friend and a family member, to start the dialogue. It's a very scary thing for our older people.
Is it something that you find they're receptive to hearing that they're at a risk for, and we need to try and start making some changes in your household? Especially going back to what we said earlier about exercise and the
You know, the older people are receptive, but they're also very stubborn. And it's kind of like, don't tell me what to do and don't disrupt my life.
Yeah.
But frankly, and when the family tells them to do something, they just don't do it.
Oh,
I mean,
yep.
But when the doctor tells them, they go, well, okay. For example, we tell people, look, you can't drive anymore. Now, if the family tells them that, you got a fist fight.
Yeah, you're going to have a fight.
If the
on your
doctor
hands.
tells them that, they go, okay.
Okay.
So we, medical community, could do more, but the family could recognize the problem, bring the patient in, or even just say, Grandma fell last week. You know, I know that's important. What should we do? So there's a lot of points of intervention.
It sounds like it. And now we're down to like 2 minutes. I know with your involvement with the Mark Twain Healthcare District, is there, and with talk of Measure A coming up and a kind of financial boon that might come to the district and some education happening, is this something that the district is looking at kind of embarking upon? Is some fall prevention kind of talk?
I'm so glad you asked. Absolutely, yes. We're actually looking at the Murphy Senior Center program as a model program, and that's,
great.
That's why I mentioned it. And we have started the dialogue and started the funding process to really expand that really throughout the county, Mike.
That would be great. The Calaveras Senior Center here in San Andreas.
Exactly. There's places in Valley Springs. There's a great place in West Point. And so the healthcare district is looking to sponsor the exercise and the balance programs, the Tai Chi programs and the training, and bring it to the county.
Oh, that's great.
Find a way to sustain it. And I am very excited about that. We actually had a board meeting this morning, and I've got 5 board members that are also very excited about it.
Great. And I would imagine that not all of them are over the age of 65 yet. So
I don't think any of them are. Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as usual on The Doctor Is In, we've kind of looked at another way that you can keep yourself healthier with a little bit of information and talking with your doctor. It's very important to talk with your doctor. So I'm going to suggest to folks that the next time they come see their doctor, if you're over the age of 65, ask, am I at risk for falling?
Take care of Grandma and Grandpa.
Yep, that too. So, folks, this has been The Doctor Is In. Dr. Randy Smart, thank you so much. We're all going to be very careful and work on our balance.
Thank you, Mike.
Until the next time, I'm Mike Taylor, and, well, the doctor is out.